always figured when I got older, God would sort of come into my life somehow. He didn't.
So today we're dealing with this scene from No Country for Old Men, scene 152. So as always, we have the shot info along the top, time code on the left. The yellow layer of the sequence at the bottom is our video layer and the edits in the video layer. The blue layers are the audio. The top one is that of the character of Belle, played by Tommy Lee Jones. And the audio layer below that is Barry Corbin, the character of Ellis. Let's walk through it and take a look at some of the more impactful edits and decisions by the editor that were made in this particular scene. Keep in mind, this is real study in following the eyes and beat work. In other words, playing around with timing, extending timing. The Coen Brothers are famous for that. So let's step through it. Let's get started. No Country for Old Men, scene 152. This particular dialogue I have split into 3 parts. So this first part is called State of Mind. The 2 particular characters in this first minute are kind of feeling each other out, trying to get a read on the state of mind. Particularly Belle on Ellis, the Tommy Lee Jones character, is getting a reading because he's going to talk to him, get his honest opinion about what he's going through, what he's facing, and he's reading him out. There's a couple of moments of that here.
How you been, Ellis?
There's
You're looking at it.
a good J cut there.
I got to say, you're looking older.
I am.
A great J cut to motivate that first edit right off the bat. After the question from Belle.
You're looking at it. I got to say, you're looking older.
I am older.
An off-screen reply by Belle right at the top. This is kind of this back and forth. The reason we're stuck on Ellis here is because of those eyes, because of that look, because of that moment where he's trying to really read Belle and where he's at.
Got a letter from your wife. She writes me pretty regular, keeping me up on the family news.
Didn't know there was any.
Told me you're quitting.
That is the first moment that he asks him about him leaving his job. And we notice that Belle is not even looking at him. He doesn't quite know how to take this, but he wants to know if Ellis is actually going to be of help to him.
You want a cup?
Appreciate it.
So that's the first deflection of that first question. It's motivated by the timing there. There's quite a bit of time between the question.
Didn't know there was any.
Told me you're quitting.
And that whole process of him looking, turning, motioning off camera, giving us some action to probably edit on. It is interesting that this particular edit that comes up
You want a cup?
Appreciate it.
goes to an empty room. I think more often than not, you're going to find that an editor is going to want to complete that action
A cup?
with him entering the room.
Appreciate it.
But there's a good 2 seconds almost where he's not there. We do see the tail of a cat.
You want a cup?
Appreciate it.
My guess is that this was to extend that time, kind of give it just a little bit more time before the next action, before the next exchange. We're still in part 1 here.
How fresh is that coffee?
I generally
There's another good J cut here. Very simple. A simple question. Belle is trying to read the state of mind of Ellis and is questioning the freshness of the coffee. Again, he is not looking at Ellis, but he's questioning his state of mind. He's questioning, they're each other. They are each questioning each other's state of mind.
How fresh is that coffee?
I generally make a fresh pot.
There's a good J cut there that helps us kind of segue that edit, considering the lighting and the structure of this particular shot is so different from the next one. This he's screened left, facing right, and looking down. In the very next shot, we're dead on with Ellis rolling up to camera in his wheelchair. So this J-cut really does help. It's very simple, but it really does help soften that edit.
Fresh as that coffee.
I generally make a fresh pot.
That first word, I generally. So see it again.
Fresh as that coffee.
I generally make a fresh pot every week, even if there's some left over.
And then we're back on this two-shot over the shoulder that was set up previously.
That man that shot you died in prison.
So here's our second deflection, asking if he wants a cup of coffee, the first one, and the second one is here, asking him about the person who shot him, who recently died in prison. This motivates that cut, and again, we're following the eyes, because that's going to help us soften the edit after the question.
That man that shot you died in prison.
There's Barry Corbin acknowledging the question, thinking about the question, thinking about his answer.
Shot you died in prison.
Angola. Yeah.
What you done? He'd have been released.
Off-screen dialogue from the Bell character. The timing here worked on this long shot, so why cut away from him? It's much better to get his reaction to really understand that he now feels that Bell is questioning him.
Angola. Yeah.
What you done? He'd have been released.
Again, we follow those eyes. The timing works here in real time, so why cut?
Angola. Yeah.
What you done? He'd have been released.
Right there.
Oh, I don't know. Nothing. Wouldn't be no point in it.
Kind of surprised to hear you say that.
Well,
And again, another J cut. That's going to lead us back to his longer edit here where he talks about the circumstances, a little bit of that moment.
point in it.
Kind of surprised to hear you say that.
Well, all the time you spend trying to get back what's been took from you, more is going out the door. After a while, you just have to try to get a tourniquet on it.
I think this statement is quite powerful. I think it really reflects what maybe Bell is thinking, where he's beginning to feel a little bit more comfortable with Ellis's state of mind and willing to accept his advice, his impression about what he's going through.
From you, more is going out the door. After a while, you just have to try to get a tourniquet on it. Your granddad never asked me to sign on as a deputy.
Another great off-screen dialogue, this time from the Ellis character, putting a little closing statement on that moment that he referenced.
Try to get a tourniquet on it. Your granddad never asked me to sign on as a deputy.
It's better to be on Tommy Lee Jones, the Bell character here, because again, he's reading state of mind. It's that simple. So that ends part one. Part two is called Overmatched. It's about a minute. We just came off of the two reading each other just a bit, very simply, just trying to find where each other stands. Ellis is truly trying to find out what Bell is thinking, and Bell is just trying to see if Ellis is going to be helpful to him.
Loretta tells me you're quitting. How come you're doing that?
I don't know. I feel overmatched.
This is a great moment as well to follow eyes, and we're going to follow
Loretta tells me you're quitting.
Ellis's eyes as he
How
responds.
come you're doing that?
I don't know. I feel overmatched.
That's a great insert, not only for Ellis's reaction, because he knew that this was coming, he can feel that this was coming, but it was also pivotal to help extend the time. We're going to notice from this point, from part 2 to part 3, that the beats are really going to be drawn out, mainly by these great reaction inserts. I mean, if we were to clock it,
I feel overmatched.
that great insert gives us a little bit of moment to take that statement.
I feel overmatched.
Ellis's reaction helps us open that up a bit. And then we go back to Bell
I always figured when I
to explain why he feels that way.
feel overmatched. I always figured when I got older, God would sort of come into my life somehow. And he didn't.
Another reaction shot. You're not just cutting to a reaction shot for any old reason. We need to see some life in those eyes. And Barry Corbin, the Ellis character, really gives it to us in these inserts. The first one and the second one.
He didn't.
Got to let that moment play out. Give it a time to read. He's realizing that he's questioning God, his place on earth, his job, pretty much everything.
I don't blame him. If I was him, I'd have the same opinion of me that he does.
You don't know what he thinks.
So those three inserts are the climax of this scene. And we'll go back and take a look at them.
I feel overmatched.
This one. Ellis is understanding.
I always figured when I got older, God would sort of come into my life somehow. And he didn't.
Ellis is concerned on that insert
I
shot.
don't blame him. If I was him, I'd have the same opinion of me that he does.
You don't know what he thinks.
And then he just blows it off. And that ends part 2 because we settle back into this over-the-shoulder 2 shot here to lead into this final part. So that's part 2. We're going to go on to part 3. Part 3 is about 2 minutes. I named it Vanity. The amount of violence, the feelings he has about being overmatched, the feelings he has about God and his place and his job. He's questioning all these things. Ellis is a former lawman and can give him some advice. They tested each other in part 1. They accepted each other in part 2. In part 3, Ellis is going to give his advice.
I sent Uncle Mac's thumbbuster and badge over to the Rangers, put it in their museum.
Great off-screen dialogue.
Daddy ever tell
Motivate
you how
that
Uncle
edit.
Mac come to his reward? Gunned down on his own porch over in Hudspeth County.
That leads us nicely into the story itself. So before we get to the story, we have Ellis break the silence.
Thanks.
By the way, a nice action edit here to start the scene. Looking down, moving his hand, and we're going to complete that action. Bring it over, motivate this 2-shot, open up the beat, give Ellis some time to think about how he's going to approach this.
I sent Uncle Mac's thumbbuster and badge over to the Rangers, put it in their museum.
Seems very off topic to go into this story, but it makes perfect sense. Ellis is giving his advice in a way that the only way he knows how, and that's by story.
Daddy ever tell you how Uncle Mac come to his reward?
Nice reaction shot here to stay on the 2-shot. Makes no sense to go to the medium shot or close-up of Bell. We're going to stay in Ellis because it's all about what he has to say here.
Gunned down on his own porch over in Hudspeth County.
In particular, we stay with Ellis this whole time.
7 or 8 of them come up there. Oh, wanting this, wanting that. Uncle Mac went back in the house to get the shotgun. Well, there's ahead of him. Shot him in his doorway. Aunt Ella come out and tried to stop the bleeding. Uncle Mac all the while trying to get that shotgun.
Another medium shot here of Bell. It's the 3rd setup on the medium shot for him. It's the first time we see this particular angle of Bell as Ellis gives us the rest of his story.
Out and tried to stop the bleeding. Uncle Mac all the while trying to get that shotgun. They just sat there on their horses, watching him die. After a while, one of them said something in Indian, and they...
Those cuts are not random. They're not just for the sake of cutting. They are to extend the time of the story, the pacing of the story, but most importantly, it's there in a portion of the story that's broken down. So in other words, the beginning of the story,
gunned down on his own porch over in Hudspeth County.
The beginning of the story gets us into this with a nice little J cut to soften that.
7 or 8 of them come up there, all wanting this, wanting that. Uncle Mac went back in the house to get the shotgun. Well, there's ahead of him. Shot him in his doorway. Aunt Ella come out and tried to stop the bleeding.
This is the natural cut, and it works because the heart of what happened, he's said, he's laying back here to give a little bit more.
Uncle Mac all the while trying to get that shotgun. They just sat there on their horses, watching him die.
The line about watching him die will stay on Bell because that's the biggest impact of that story, or the result of that story. And then we're going to go back and stay on him throughout. Those sentences are broken up on purpose. That cut, this insert, is all there for that purpose.
After a while, one of them said something in Indian, and they turned and left out. Uncle Mac knew the score, even if Aunt Ella didn't. Shot through the left lung. And that was that, as they say.
So that last part of the story makes perfect sense to sit on Ellis, to come off of Bell, so that it lives on its own. That timing there, fantastic. That's a good 3 seconds on this cut.
When did he die?
We wonder what he's actually thinking. He wants the detail of the actual death. Something that probably has never been asked of Ellis.
1909.
No, I mean,
Great little J cut there to motivate the next edit, which is Bell interrupting Ellis with a specific detail maybe Ellis hadn't thought of.
9.
no, I mean,
A bit of an L cut here.
right away or in the night, or when was it?
A great L cut to help us segue into Ellis, also softening that edit, giving Ellis some chance to think about it. His eyes move down, and now he's going to think of that detail and what Bell wants to know. Technically, you
I
can
believe it's that night.
consider that an L cut because the video of Ellis comes in over what Bell is saying.
When was it?
I believe it's that night.
Then he replies.
She buried him the next morning, digging in that hard old caliche.
Great off-screen reactionary shot there.
Digging in that hard old caliche. What you got ain't nothing new.
And then we stay on Ellis for the remainder of this scene, which is the heart of the scene, which is him basically finally giving his small piece of advice, understanding the state of mind. Then we talk about what's at stake for Bell. Ellis tries to interpret it with story in part 3, and then pulls it all together here with this fantastic string of lines with a couple of inserts of Bell.
What you got ain't nothing new. This country's hard on people.
Great off-screen dialogue there. Help expand the time and get some reaction of Bell during these real pivotal words.
This country's hard on people.
And it's a nice moment to follow those eyes. Something he probably knew, but he's getting confirmation now via Ellis. Nice reaction.
This country's hard on people.
Let the moment play out. Let the moment read, and then we cut back to Ellis.
You can't stop what's coming. It ain't all waiting on you.
Another great insert shot of Bell here at the 4-minute mark, at the 4:06 mark. Just so we can get his eyes back on the moment. Since we lost them here.
What you got ain't nothing new. This country's hard on people.
Where he loses himself in a little bit of his thought. Ellis
Can't
waits,
stop what's coming.
gives him the advice.
It ain't all waiting on you.
and then we settle back in with Belle for the last line.
All waiting on you. That's vanity.
A great scene altogether. Not a particularly long scene. 36 edits in 37 shots, only 4 minutes and 10 seconds of time, but we walk through the entire mentality of this film, from a breaking down of the state of mind of each other to a second part where Belle actually accepts where Ellis is at and gives him what's at stake, to the third part where Ellis, through story and through direct lines, gives him his advice. Hope you like this one. Catch you guys on the next one.